Get there, Mr. Chairman.
That's what he asked, and yeah.
I'll get there, Mr. Chairman, but I did want to raise this issue of EUDR because it is part and parcel of this thing of climate change. And Mr. Chairman, technology is going to assist us. The biggest thing in terms of the Honorable Gikaria's question is technology. We all know that these days the meteorological department can actually predict very well. If you look at your mobile app and look at it, we can predict very well. There was a time when we talk about Russia, pale na pale, which was never going to happen. But I think that we are very confident. And as AI develops, the predictability and our ability to tell the weather is going to become more and more precise. And therefore, at that point, what then do we do? Because information is one thing, but what do you do when you do it? We need drought-resistant crops, drought-resistant animals that can withstand higher heat and longer and higher temperatures that currently exist. This is a scientific issue, and we are going to work with the research organizations to make sure that at least we mitigate part of what can be very severe natural disasters.
Thank you. Yes, Janet.
Chairman, I know the nominee was once a politician, but he has cleverly evaded the issue of the vaccine. And we know each other why he's doing that.
Mr. Chairman, it is indeed true that I was once a politician, but that is not, but I wasn't evading the question, because the matter is very simple to me. And in consultation with those in agriculture, we have also come to the same conclusion. I think the long and short of it is the following. Number one is that my understanding is that the whole vaccination process is to address two diseases. It is to address the PPR and foot and mouth disease. That's what the issue is about. Mr. Chairman, talked about earlier about social media and what can be propaganda and otherwise. And I think the most important thing is to involve those involved in the industry, including the members of this House, is to involve those involved with the information that we have. And say, this is a vaccine. It is being made by Govt, who are our own people. It is for this and this purpose. We only vaccinate about 10% of our livestock. We want to vaccinate more than that. But the point of the matter is this. The cow, as I said earlier, belongs to an individual. It doesn't belong to the government. The goat belongs to an individual, not to the government. So the matter is simple. Here is a vaccine. It is for foot and mouth disease. You have a goat. Do you want the goat to be vaccinated? You say, yes, I want to be vaccinated. We vaccinate. You say, no, I don't want my goat to be vaccinated. Sawa. Do you have a cow? Do you want the cow to be vaccinated? This is the reason why it is to be vaccinated. You say, yes, we vaccinate. You say, no, we don't vaccinate. Allah?
Thank you.
Yes,
Robert.
Point of order, Honorable Chairman, point of order.
Yes, Mishi.
I think, Chairman, on the same breath, because there is a lot of misconception and a lot of negative narrative, so we wanted to hear from the nominee, how is he going to address to the public and put some trust to the public regarding the vaccination? We wanted to hear on that perspective.
Thank you, Honorable Mishi. The communication aspect of it is huge. The communication aspect of this is very big. And I'm going to use the experts. I'm going to use the experts in Govt. I'm going to use the experts who understand this very well to be actually the lead communicators, just like we did with COVID, where we had the doctors themselves explain the issue. We also want to use the veterinary officers to themselves explain what we are trying to do. So you can be sure, Honorable Member, that I am going to put a very robust communication system on this matter.
Robert Mbui,
yeah, thank
Baya, Murugara.
Speaker, maybe before we leave that issue of vaccines,
yes.
Because I remember C.S. Mutahi telling us, if I can get it, you can get it on COVID. And largely, the issue of vaccines, the problem has been misinformation and the people communicating. Because the ministry has left it to the political class to communicate, and probably, should he be approved, is the area around that communication that he will need to look into, so that the right people, as you say, communicate, but also communicate the right information to the cow owners. Because again, if we leave it to the members of the public to decide, since the cow is mine, and I base my decision on misinformation, I could decide not to vaccinate my cow to my detriment and the detriment of the country's productivity. Probably, since he has already answered that, but just for information, Honorable Speaker, that should he be approved, that's some of the challenges you find.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Hold
As I
there,
said,
you'll come to
Sorry.
that. Robert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The nominee says that he's very passionate to assist Kenyan farmers. Now, I have very quick concerns. One, there was this major scandal of fake fertilizer that made our Kenyan farmers lose very heavily. With your passion, will you consider initiating a process of compensating those farmers that lost, negatively, that were affected negatively by this scandal? There's also media reports, and this is what members here are talking about, indicating that despite there being no budgetary allocation, this issue of, livestock vaccination is actually being propagated by multinationals that want to test, vaccines on our animals. What is your comment on that? And finally, the government has been accused in the recent past of regulation of private business, especially agriculture. I mean, there's regulations on you have to get a license to grow, a license to harvest, a license to transport, a license to store, a license to sell. What is your comment on that? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Nominee, I would like to ask you the following question. One, just on the oil crops and the cost of edible oils in Kenya, there has been a over-reliance on the importation of edible oils. And yet this country, especially at the coast, has huge potential to actually bring down the cost of edible oils and actually grow our GDP. Crops like coconut, cashew nuts, ground nuts, and many other nuts that grow at the coast. But there has been little investment in this sector, especially there, and farmers there feel that they have lost their land, and production, and there's nothing they get out of the land because government has not invested in these crops. What will you do if approved as Cabinet Secretary to ensure the people at the coast do not continue to suffer loss of productivity? Secondly, what is your position on GMO crops in Kenya? What is your position on the genetically modified organism crops in this country? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Murugara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on value addition to agricultural produce, and this involves crops and livestock production. The first one is that the reason why farmers are actually finding it difficult to get into agriculture is because they have to sell their crops raw without any value addition, as a result of which they are so cheap that it is expensive to grow them, it is cheap to sell those crops. Number two, also use of prohibited pesticides and chemicals to spray the crops. And when it comes to livestock, to actually vaccinate, as you have just explained, and to treat the diseases that affect our livestock. Some of the chemicals we use, pesticides, are banned in countries where we are supposed to be selling those crops. What are you likely to do so that you are able to cut the niche of the market out there as regards our agricultural crops and our livestock?
Ferdinand?
Nominee, I come from Trans Nzoia, and I want to be very, very specific. First and foremost, distribution of the fertilizer. you know, farmers must be attracted to do their job. But the distribution of fertilizers in the country is bad because it's put in one place and the farmers have to travel miles and miles to get whatever they want to go, so that the cost of actual production goes up. And so most of them are actually discouraged. Secondly, and I want to just correct you, you talked about the youths. I think you have to get the youth to get into extension services, because that is very, very important. And for you to get this youth, you must have a program to attract the youth so that we have these extension services so that the youth can be able to go there and do some work. And I think it's very important that we get that right. Lastly, if you don't mind, we had fake fertilizers, and the farmers, I don't know whether somebody asked that, but I don't think, yeah, somebody asked that. If we did, then of course, specifically, we have ADC land. And you rightly say the population of this country is going up. And yet ADC farms are lying idle. What are you going to do if you actually make you a minister for agriculture? Be specific on this one. Thank you.
Last on that round, Naisula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the issue on livestock farm, I just want to put it to Honorable Mutahi Kagwe that it's one thing to speak very flowery words about leather, about livestock, but when you look even at the budgetary allocation that is given to the State Department on livestock, it is very minimal. And being honest as a country in ensuring that we take livestock matters seriously, because if you look at even the funding, most of the time it is donor funded. And donor funded, you know, it is for a specific period and for specific interventions, but not the whole aspect of it. But my question to you is that the whole issue on research as a country, in the past we have been a very, a country that is known for its research, and mostly on our foods, on even the livestock, on agriculture. I'd like to know what you think about us as a country on the measures that we are putting in place and what we need to do to ensure that research goes back to where it was and gets the necessary funding, because that is important.
Nominee, you can answer those 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me start with the issue of the fake fertilizers that was raised, because it has been raised by quite a number of members. And to answer as follows. Number one is that obviously that was an extremely unfortunate thing to do. Mr. Chairman, there are 2 areas that I find almost reasonable. One of them is the area of seeds, fake seeds, and the other one is fake fertilizers. Because that issue actually affects not only food security, but actually national security. Because if you grow for a whole year, you are growing something and it was fake from the beginning, or you give your cows fake feeds and they die, Mr. Chairman, this is a matter that I would like even to work with this House to create more civility in terms of the penalties that are involved when people sell fake fertilizers, when people sell fake seeds. This is an area where, if approved, Mr. Chairman, I would like to work with this House to create that civility. And to do so, I cannot, sitting here today, talk about what I can do in terms of the farmers who have lost. This is a matter that I would have to go into the ministry, look at it, discuss it with perhaps Treasury, and see what can be done. But I take your point that a loss was made, and somebody benefited from it, but nobody was compensated, for the loss. And it's a matter that I take, and I'll take to heart. Mr. Chairman, on the issue of livestock vaccination, I spoke to it, and I spoke about what I believe. And obviously, sitting in the office, I will have the information at my fingertips. I will be clear. This is a vaccine that is being made locally by Kevavapi. One of the things that I would like to say as a highlight to all the things that I have been asked, including the pesticides that I think Mheshimiwa Ferdinand spoke about, is to say that there will be a rule of thumb that, in my opinion, the ministry, if approved, would adopt. Number one is this: whether GMO, whether pesticide, whether fertilizer, if that product is not being used in its country of origin, it will not be used in Kenya. If it is a fertilizer, if it is a GMO product, if it is a seed.
Do you know the case of Roundup?
Yes, I'm aware of the case of Roundup. I'm conversant with that debate, Mr. Chairman. In fact, there was a luring in Australia, I think it's this week or last week, that was made on the same, where in Australia they said that it is not carcinogenic, but this is something that I will sit with my scientists and my decide that the decisions will be made on the basis of science and data. Because it is not enough that I proclaim here, but I can tell you that there will be no product that is going to be sold in this country under my watch in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock that is going to be a product being tested here. We are not guinea pigs. We will not be used by anybody as guinea pigs. I am aware, Mr. Chairman, for example, there are some organizations overseas that are rebranding their products so that instead of coming as the main product which has been banned overseas, they rebrand themselves as another product so that we can pass it here. And I can tell you that we will be as vigilant as we can be to ensure that we protect our farmers as well as our private sector players. In terms of the taxation regime, because I think, Honorable Member, that's what you are referring to. Yeah, the regulations and the many things that you have to pay. You have to pay for research, you have to pay for transport, you have to pay just to be able to export. You have to be able to, every single document has got a tax on it. You know, this is something that we need to look at, because by the end of the day, it would be better to create a bigger volume of business people and tax them a little than to have just a few business people, which you tax a lot. Because the bigger volume of business people create jobs, you know, the less ones don't. So I'll be fighting, you know, for that position to change. You know, I'll do whatever I can within the Ministry of Agriculture. But of course, this is something I have to work with my colleagues, you know, in other. On the issue of oil crops and farming of palm oil and other nuts, so on, particularly in the coast, yes, I completely agree that this is something that we have missed an opportunity here, because we are only producing about 10% of these oils. Yes, we use them every day. So we are using foreign exchange unnecessarily when we can actually grow palm oil. We have seen countries that have changed completely. Uganda, next door, is growing a lot of their oils now. So there is no reason why we can't do it. But I also know that we have got to work with the extension farmers that Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi also referred to. We have got to have educated extension farmers to change some of the cultural norms that our people have against or for farming certain goods. For example, I know for a fact that AFA has produced a huge quantity of coconut seedlings that they are trying to distribute. And therefore, there is an education and extension work that is required there to go and tell the people, we have got this, but it's not enough that you go to a farmer and tell them you have got coconut seedlings. How do you plant them? Where do you plant them? What sort of fertilizer do you use? Is it organic fertilizer? Is it, you know, mineral fertilizer? So there is quite a bit to be done so that we stop blaming the people and take responsibility ourselves to grow. On the issue of GMO, again, I repeat what I said. But we must also ask ourselves, what is GMO? You know, this genetic modified organism, what is the mischief that this organism, this genetic change is supposed to have done? And there are two sides to this. There is a positive side and there is a negative side. And one of the first things that we must do is ensure that the National Biosafety Authority is sufficiently funded, is sufficiently prepared to deal with GMOs. You cannot deal with GMOs in your country until you have got the institutional framework to make sure that the regulatory framework is there, to make sure that the rules and regulations to deal with those products and services are there, so that we are clear that if a GMO product comes, it will be to the benefit of our nation. And there are some benefits to some of the products. For example, if you look at the cotton growing areas, and you look at BT, and what has happened because of the absence of the worm, you can see that cotton is now increasing. We are now having more cotton. So they are, and let's also forget that genetic modification of plants happens naturally anyway. The maize that we are growing today is not the maize that we originally got from Mexico, centuries ago. It's a different one. Wheat is not the same. What is critical is for us to ensure that we are not used by people for testing their GMO products. If you have got a GMO product that you have designed yourself, use it in your own country. Let's get testimonials of what is happening with that GMO in that country. Then when you have failed or succeeded, let's talk about it then. Otherwise, it's GMOs that we have created for ourselves, using our own scientists, that we should be considering on a first line basis. Mr. Chairman, the National Biosafety Authority is currently very small, unstructured, and I would like to work with this House to ensure that we support it via budgetary allocations and so on, to make sure that that authority is sufficiently funded and properly run to help us with the GMO, because the GMO issue is going to become a big thing globally, and so we must be ready for it. I think I spoke about the fertilizers, but one of the things I didn't talk about is the process of getting it to the farmers. There has been, I know, just as a Kenyan, I know there is an outcry out there that whatever subsidy you give can very easily be offset by the transportation costs of where you are getting it from. And therefore, what I intend to do is working with the county governments, ensure that we use the processes in county governments, we use the processes in, with the cooperative movement, with the circles, to ensure that this can go as close to the people as possible. There would be no reason whatsoever why any farmer, for example, sitting in a county, should come to Nairobi to go and to come for fertilizer. That is something, is a cost that we should bear. Otherwise, we would be giving with one hand and taking the same with the other. And therefore, I'm not going to preside or supervise over an activity such as that one. The other aspect of fertilizer, I think, that has not been raised, and I also want to mention, is the question of accountability. Accountability of the subsidized fertilizers. And that is to say that if we must have proper data in terms of what is a farmer, how much has been allocated to a farmer, how much is going to them. Is it the same quantity or a different quantity? Do we have a situation where I've been allocated 5 bags and I get 3 bags, where another farmer has been allocated 10 bags and get 12 bags? And technology, again, here can help us with the traceability of the fertilizer. We need a platform that can say, as Mutahi Kagwe, I got a message that I can collect 5 bags, but I must also give feedback that I actually received 5 bags. That way, my allocation and what I actually received can be reconciled, and therefore that transparency can kill a lot of the suspicion that is currently within that accountability of the subsidized fertilizers. And yes, extension services, Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi, is a way to go. But I think what I want to clarify is that I do not see the youth as just people who are going to be employed in extension services. I see the youth as the major participants in the activities of farming. You and I, and a lot of our age mates, are slowly disappearing. And we need to make sure that our food security is no longer with us. Our food security should be with the young people, who are the ones who are getting children and so on. So yes, we are using them as extension people, but we want to mainstream agriculture also to the youth. On the issue of Mheshimiwa Naisula, spoke about the budgetary allocations and donor funding for the programs that are going on, particularly in the livestock keeping areas. And I want to say the two things. Number one is that we have got to be the ones driving the donors. We don't want donor-driven projects. Donor-driven projects have got a way of becoming expensive eventually. And you know, Mr. Chairman, this word donor is something that we need to clarify. You will remember, even in the 9th Parliament, we were talking about this definition, donor. Donor is not actually a real donor, as we understand it in the English language. It's a loan. It's actually a bank loan, which is disguised as a donor. So let's make sure that we are talking the right things. These people who come to do the projects in all the areas in agriculture, this is money that will eventually be paid by Kenyans. So we must not take donor-driven ideas. It is our ideas that we should be discussing with the donors. And in the course of that discussion, we must discuss the question of sustainability. What happens when this program is over? Part of the donor fund must be that sustainable aspect, the training of the farmers themselves, the training of the extension people themselves, so that when they are leaving a complete project that is ongoing. And to your question regarding research organizations such as CARO and the others, I think a lot of our research organizations have also been misused. Misused to the extent that we are working with international organizations. They are using our scientists to carry out this research. And what we find, and the discoveries that we make a patent out there by others who then bring the results of the research here for us to buy. I think that it is important for us to put a legal framework within our research organization. And I can tell you this is something I tried to introduce at KEMRI, because the same thing was happening with the researchers for health. I think it is also time for us to ensure that the researchers for vet medicines and vet services are also part of that understanding. Yes, we need to work with international organizations, because essentially research is international in its nature. But we must make sure that what we get here and our findings here remain ours. That data, when you see an organization coming to say they want to work with you in research, what they are looking for is data. We must make sure that that data belongs to us. And people can buy from us, not us use our nation, use our scientists to then buy from them.
Thank you. Yes, Ferdinand, ADC Farms.
Yeah, no, I've finished, but I just wanted to request the nominee, in case you are being made Minister for Agriculture, I want you on this extension service so I can be able to increase productivity for export and local consumption. Look for budget allocation for training of extension services. Just look for budget for that, because we have talked about.
You are the ones who give money.
No, but they have to go. He has to ask for it.
Yes, Daud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the nominee, I don't know when you last walked on the streets of Nairobi, but you know when there are goons on the streets who want to pickpocket you or something, I'll say it in Kiswahili, watakwambia, mwizi akiwa amekuiba, atakwambia, angalia ule mwizi ule, na yeye ndio mwizi. So I'm not putting it to you that you are anything like that. But you know, you have just talked about cartels. You were standing outside Afia House and said, the cartels are here. And you did nothing about them, because you left that and the cartels are still there. Now I'm putting it to you. While you were the Minister for Health, there was a vaccine which was approved, Sputnik. And at that time, there were no vaccines in the country. People were dying, and it was a private firm which was approved by the Medical Association to import the Sputnik vaccine. But your ministry went ahead, while they had already administered those vaccines, some of it, and you canceled the vaccine should not be administered without thinking the investment which was put in by the investor who brought that, and it was a private investment. So how are we sure that once you go to the Ministry of Agriculture, you will not stop any new investor the way you did while you were at the Health Ministry? Secondly, when you're talking about cartels, I'm just talking about cartels for you, Kagwe. The Mira, His Excellency the President, when campaigning in the Kenya Kwanza, he promised the whole of Meru, Embu, and the Mount Kenya East that this government would take care of the Mira farmer and the markets and all that. Unfortunately, we have not gone too far. But are you aware that the Mira farmers who are going to the airport have to pay a levy, which is levied, which there is no receipt for it, there is no nothing, but they have to pay millions of shillings a day. Not one or two, many millions of levy, which even your AFA, which is under the Ministry of Agriculture, says they are aware about it, but they can do nothing about it. So there is a cartel there as well. I'm giving you the facts. Lastly, you have said about the fake fertilizer. The former Minister for Agriculture, Honorable Mithika Linturi, he comes from my county, not from my constituency. He said there was no fake fertilizer. He's on record saying there was no fake fertilizer. If there was fake fertilizer, as you have alluded to, and no people have been taken to court for that fake fertilizer, and nobody has been compensated for that fake fertilizer, is it true there was fake fertilizer or there was no fake fertilizer? And the fertilizer was being distributed by National Cereals and Produce Board, a government agency, not private shops. So what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
Marcel?
Thank you, Chairman. Nominee, you've spoken to the aspect of how to make agriculture more profitable and how to make it more attractive, and they need to incorporate technology and information and all that. But a number of studies have also indicated that many farmers do not comply to safety practices. Reasons being, there is lack of extension officers, there's lack of awareness to existing food safety requirements, and there is also poor enforcement of regulations. So I'm wondering, my question is, how are you going to promote food safety? And we are also aware that Fenton spoke about the extension officers. There are no extension officers. I put it to you from the ground, there are no extension officers. Yet we have so many graduates, agricultural graduates, from the TVET, from universities. So how, if you were nominated, your nomination successful, how are you going to create opportunities to absorb more of these agricultural officers? Because there's nobody to train. I presume you have to onboard them, then train. And then now tell us how you're going to promote safety. Secondly, we've spoken about fertilizer. My question is very straight, and I want to give an example of Busia County. Fertilizer depot is in Malaba town. How does this farmer from Busia town or from Budalangi travel to Malaba to collect fertilizer? What are you going to do to make sure that we take it to the closest administrative unit, probably at constituency level, so that the farmer from Butula gets it from there, and it's same to all the others? My last one is on sugarcane. I come from a sugarcane growing area. And I'm aware recently that you are aware that the National Assembly did pass the sugar bill. How, according to you, is it going to be a game changer in the sugar subsector? There are still issues around zoning, issues around pricing. There's a farmer who has just texted me that the price per ton has gone down from 5,500 to 4,200. So what are you going to do to improve the price of cane so that our farmers can benefit? Thank you.
Sharia.
Thank you, Chairman. Mheshimiwa, there's a growing interest in public-private partnerships. How do you plan to foster PPPs in the agriculture and livestock sector? Thank you.
Meshi.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, in our country, we have been facing two scenarios. One is recurrent drought, and second is recurrent flooding. And I'm just asking the nominee, what mitigation measures are you going to put in place to ensure that you intervene on these two scenarios? Because I'm just looking like an area in the coastal region, an area like Tana River, which experience erratic rainfall, prolonged dry spells, and intense flooding. And this scenario, both, they affect crop and livestock sector. So how are you going to mitigate this? Because I'm thinking that during flooding, maybe we can do some measures to ensure that maybe we harvest that water which is caused by the flooding, so that it can be used during the drought. But most of the ministers who have come, they've been talking a lot on how they're going to mitigate on this issue, and yet they have done nothing so far. My second question is just to emphasize on what the Kenya Kwanza government has been talking about in terms of creating employment opportunities. One of the area is in agriculture, and I'm just thinking, I'm looking at how the minister have been doing a lot in terms of coffee, tea, and even sugar sector, whereby they've put a lot of initiative to ensure that they create some jobs and also they boost the economy. What are you going to do in terms of coconut, cashew nut, and also Bixa, in terms of having some local industry in the coast region so that we can have some employment opportunities for the youth? And also, again, on the same breath, and this is my last question, it is the challenges which the farmers on coconut and cashew nut are facing in coast region, especially on pest, disease management, and also planting materials. What are your measures which are going to put in place so that we ensure even coconut, cashew nut, and Bixa can thrive in the coastal region, to ensure that our economy is being boosted and even we have job creation for the youth? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Thank you, nominee. Can you answer those four?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with the issue of fertilizer. First of all, I want to say that, let me start with Mr. Dawood's question on the issue of the Sputnik. I remember distinctly the issue of Sputnik vaccine that came from Russia. And I can tell you, Honorable Member, through the chair, that there was not a single vaccine that we allowed into Kenya that was not approved, and there was not a single vaccine that we refused to take that was approved. Now, the issue here is who approves it. And our rule within the National Emergency Response Committee on coronavirus, and following the advice that we also got, is that we did not use any vaccines that were not WHO, World Health Organization approved. And I'm aware that at the time that we had stored with Sputnik, the condition that we give Sputnik is, and the Russian people even came to see us, not even the business people, is to say, please deal with the World Health Organization approval, and as soon as you have got those approvals, we have no problem using the vaccine. Because you can imagine how many, what we'd have to deal with vaccines coming from very many different parts of the world. The only thing that we could do and guarantee the safety of our people was to use the World Health Organization as a major approval organization for us. And at that time,
Point of order, Chair. Yes. Chairman, sorry. The minister, the former Minister of Health is not telling us the truth. There is no way the vaccine could have come to Kenya if it was not approved. That is the first thing. They had an approval from the Kenya Medical Practitioners Board, and it was even administered. 230,000 doses were administered. But it was politics which made it to go out. It was a private venture. Yes, they had everything, but the minister is not telling us, the former minister is not telling us the truth.
Are you not telling us the truth? Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Hold there. Yes, Junet.
Chairman, I agree with the Honorable Dawood. The vaccine arrived in Kenya with the approval of the government, and it was administered to many people, including the current president. And what happened when the current president, who was the deputy president, took it, is when that regime stopped it. Let us be honest to each other. Yeah, let's be honest.
Mr. Chairman.
Did you play politics with the health of Kenyans?
Mr. Chairman, I want to repeat that the only approvals that we recognize as the National Executive Committee on Coronavirus was approvals that came from the World Health Organization.
If that was the case, just hold there. How did the vaccine get into Kenya and have it administered on Kenyans before you chased it away? Yes, including our then deputy president getting a jab of that vaccine.
Mr. Chairman, all I can say is that whether a vaccine has arrived in the country or not, no matter how it has arrived in the country or not, if it has not been approved by the World Health Organization, we cannot use it, and we did not use it. I think I rest my case.
So are you telling us that it had, by the time it arrived and it was administered to 230,000 people, it had not yet received approval from World Health Organization?
Absolutely not. And I think, Mr. Speaker, I do not recall the actual figures that it had been administered to. I cannot remember now what figure, but I don't think it was anywhere near, the kind of figure that you had said. Suffice it to say, Mr. Chairman, that the decision that was made at the time by the National Emergency Response Committee and the Ministry of Health was that we will not, and we would not in the future, use any vaccine that had not been internationally approved by the World Health Organization.
And you are the chairman of that committee?
And I was the chairman.
Yes.
And I take responsibility. And we agreed, Mr. Chairman, we agreed, even at that point, as I remember, we agreed that if the vaccine could get World Health Organization approval, we would use it.
What Dawood has put to you is that you made an irrational decision based on political consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask him what Honorable Junet has said. The Deputy President at that time and the President right now, who has nominated you today, is the one who took that jab, is when you stopped the Sputnik. Is that true or not true?
Absolutely not true.
Point of order, Chair. Chair, when that, Chairman, when we were taking the vaccines,
yes,
there were many vaccines. There was AstraZeneca, there was this one and others.
Pfizer,
Johnson & Johnson. Chairman, we were in the country here. At that time, people were really looking for vaccines to use.
Desperately.
The day the current president, who was then the deputy president, got a jab in the afternoon, in the evening, a press statement came out saying that thing is banned in our country. That's the truth of the matter. That's the truth of the matter.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot recall the events as they followed, if indeed that is the way they followed. But I repeat my position. We could only use a vaccine approved by the World Health Organization.
Go on with the others. I'm sure you know.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the issue of mitigating circumstances, I think that were raised by Mishi, the issue of what do we do when there are droughts and then there is flooding that happens. I'll come back to the others as well. I agree with her that, Honorable Chairman, that the issue of drought mitigation is critical. And it has been there a long time. We all know about Budalangi, and we know other areas in the coast. And season after season, the discussion is the same. And what I would like to commit myself to, Mr. Chairman, is working with the ministries involved. As you are aware, the Ministry of Irrigation The Ministry of Water is charged with the dam, the areas of matters to do with damming. But I also want to involve the county governments in this matter, because the issue of acceptability, for example, the involvement of the county governments with the extension farmers, because in Schedule 4, extension farmers that Honorable Emase raised, extension farmers are actually the job of the county government. My job is to ensure that we fight this fight in terms of training, in terms of budgeting and funding, so that we have got these people. And I would like to refer to the matter that you referred, which you say that this House is the one that allocates budgets, and to say that in spite of that, we can also predicate some of these things on what Honorable Naisura had raised on the issue of donors. This is one of the areas that we could try very hard to work with our funders and with our donors in terms of the extension farmers, so that in mitigating the issues that have been raised, the conditions and challenges that Honorable Michi has raised, ensuring that we have got the proper crops to use during drought, ensuring that we have got the correct livestock to use, ensuring that diseases don't start affecting our livestock just because there was flooding, going on. I think that is a job that will ably be done by extension people. I think they are as crucial as Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi had raised. And I'm going to work very hard with the county governments to ensure that extension farmers, but also working concurrently with the ministries involved in dam building, such as Ministry of Water and irrigation. And I think that, Mr. Chairman, the other involvement is also the committees of parliament. The committees of parliament on agriculture, the committees of parliament on health, on water and cooperatives. I think sometimes it is also good for us to have discussions together with them. And I propose to also engage them so that we can discuss budgeting and budget allocations also here, together obviously with the budget committee. Mr. Chairman, yes, Honorable Michi spoke about the job, the aspect of job creation in agriculture. And I think that sometimes we also miss opportunities of job creation in agriculture. For example, we are talking about fertilizer subsidies. And we have got companies in this country that can actually make fertilizers. Away from the coast, there are some companies in the coast. And it is true that if we structure the subsidies properly, it is possible that these companies that make fertilizers can be funded or can be part of the subsidy movement so that they too can create jobs. I think whatever we do at whatever time we do it, we need to ensure that any opportunity to create a job is not lost, because part of the challenge we are having with our youth is actually that job aspect of job creation. And I think I alluded to the issue of disease, disease management. Again, research on these issues is going to assist us a lot on disease management. But I think that it is better to use preventive measures, ensuring that the diseases don't occur in the first place, rather than curative measures that we have got to deal with after the event has taken place. On the issue of sugar and the sugar bill, yes, I'm aware that the sugar bill has gone through, and I'm also aware that we produced this year, a large quantity, in perhaps the highest quantity, a large quantity of sugar, which actually might save us from importing sugar this year. And I think that is a fantastic development, but it must not be at the cost of the farmer. It cannot be at the cost of the farmer, because I think we should understand that the subsidy to the farmer is not a subsidy to the farmer per se. It is only a subsidy to the farmer directly. It is indirectly a subsidy to the consumer, because it is the
Sugar Act nominee is awaiting, if you are approved, to promulgate the regulations.
I'm aware of that, Mr. Chairman.
That you are now delving into.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Mr. Chairman. Yes. And that's what I alluded to. And I think that the regulations will be done in the fastest possible time.
That's what we'll deal with.